Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Committee meeting. I'm Liz Schell. I'm the chair, Councillor for Portsmouth. We have our committee in total here. We have Councillor Allen, Vice Chair, Councillor Neal, Councillor McLaren, Councillor Osanek, and Councillor Turner. And our clerk tonight is Clerk Thompson. And we have a number of members of staff. We have our Director of Planning, Agnew, and beside her, Manager Vendetti, and 4 planners with us this evening. Planner Bolton, Eusebio, Sands, and Diedrichson. So welcome everyone, and now I will read the public meeting introduction. We have a number of public meetings. Notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making any decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning, Building, and Licensing Services. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be opened to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Exemption to this rule is outlined in bylaw number 2006-75 to delegate various planning approvals to staff and to adopt certain procedures for the processing of planning applications subject to delegated authority. Council has authorized staff to use discretion in determining if an application can be a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process, and we do have combined public meeting comprehensive reports for a zoning bylaw amendment to 2165 Bath Road and 103 Richardson Drive, and a decision will be made at the regular portion of the Planning Committee meeting tonight. Information gathered at public meetings is then referred back to Planning, Building, and Licensing Services staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to Planning Committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. This committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council. City Council has the final say on the applications from the city's perspective. Following council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and anyone with an interest in the matter may file an appeal. Interested persons are advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Thank you. And we will begin our public meetings tonight with an application for zoning bylaw amendment, 85 King Street East. And Mr. Toe will be presenting along with Mr. Downey.
So thank you very much, members of the Planning Committee and staff and members of the public who are out tonight. So this public meeting is for zoning bylaw amendment for 85 King Street. My name is Mark Tower. I'm a planner with the IBI Group, and presenting with me tonight will be Bruce Downey of Hughes Downey Architects. So the application is specifically to request permission to rezone the property, but to place it in 2 site-specific zones. There's a consent application for severance associated with this application, and the properties as proposed, which I'll show you later, would essentially house 2 dwellings on them, one with 2 dwelling units and one with a single dwelling unit, and connecting the 2 buildings would be a proposed garage. So the property is designated under the Ontario Heritage Act and has recently gone through approvals for some of the changes proposed to the buildings as they are proposed. So the subject property is at 85 King Street West, or East, sorry. It's located between Simcoe and Maitland Street on the corner. It's probably most recognizable by the large stone wall that goes around the property on King and Simcoe. If you've been by the house at all recently, you'll notice that lots of work has been going on there, including restoration of the wall, re-shingling the roof, and I'll say re-shingling, actually re-slating the roof. So a lot of work is being done by the owner in terms of improving the property. So this is a picture of the property and the house on it. See if my pointer is going to work. If not, so the main house is obviously the large house on the corner, and then in behind it on Maitland is a 2-story stone carriage house. As I mentioned, the property is designated. There are currently 3 dwelling units inside the main house, and the carriage house is currently being used essentially as an accessory building. There's a garage as well as some upstairs storage space. I'll pass the presentation over at this point to Mr. Downey, and he'll describe what is being proposed as part of the proposed renovations to the house and to the grounds.
Good evening. The owner purchased the house out of interest for the property. He was looking to develop a property that allowed him to have a place in town, and it's a magnificent mansion built in 1877 that he wishes to restore, bring back to its original state, and at the same time develop the carriage house into a residence. And the carriage house is a 2-story building, stone, as the main house is, and it used to be linked to the main house with a 2-story building, as the insurance maps show. So the owner wished, as part of the development that included development of the carriage house into a residence, to have a garage built that linked these 2 buildings, so you could come from the main house or the carriage house into a garage. This was substantiated that historically this would be an appropriate thing to do, but he also didn't want it to impede too much on the movement through the ground, so he wanted to make sure that 2 major doors opened on the front and the back of this carriage house, which creates a little bit of a sheltered walkway from the parking area into the garden. All of the renovations to what this slide shows is sort of blocking out a framework of the extent to which we wanted to impact the existing structures with a building. And I think we've stayed pretty close to that in the building, in the drawing above, where we use some of the details in the main house to be reflected in this carriage house design. There won't be any increase in units. There'll be the same units. We're just taking 1 unit out of the main house and we're putting it into the carriage house. The owner isn't interested in developing a number of units in this property. He is looking to sever the property in order to, well, primarily get separate services into the carriage house from the main house, as opposed to having all the services go into the main house and then cross over to the carriage house. He has spent a considerable amount of time investigating alterations that include the masonry work and the slate roof. And Mark Peabody, who's the contractor who's here tonight, knows that he invests in a very good tradespeople, and also looks into details of that construction himself. So all of the work that we'll be doing on both of these buildings will be as authentic as we can make it.
Thanks. Thank you, Bruce. So I'll just step back quickly and just, as Bruce described, in terms of the changes, there will be a new garage link joining the carriage house and the main house, as was historically the case. A severance is proposed basically down the middle of the garage. essentially this would give a parking space to each of the houses. There's also proposed to be parking as exists today within the courtyard here. And then there would also be proposed to be a mutual right-of-way for access for vehicles. So there's actually a break in the wall. So the stone wall travels all the way along the east property line here, except for a break here where the driveway entrance is. So the proposed lot line would essentially sever to the middle of this entrance, and then there'd be right-of-ways in favor of both properties to ensure vehicles, et cetera, can access appropriately and turn around. So the parcel to be severed is here. The carriage house is this square rectangle here, and then there'd be a large backyard space associated with it, and then obviously the garage and the entrance, and then the retained parcel being the main house with all the grounds associated with it. So with respect to the policy, the PPS has a number of policies on development within the urban fabric in terms of intensification, et cetera. This isn't strictly intensification as it is maintaining the same number of units, being 3. However, it's breaking up the property into 2 separate properties, which provides some different options for home ownership or rental. It also maintains, in this case, importantly, the cultural heritage value of the property, which is being dealt with through the separate Heritage Act processes. With respect to the official plan, it's designated residential, which permits the use. The only change to the building envelopes is this historic garage link between the 2 structures being restored. So no changes to the building envelopes are proposed as part of the application. The coach house, as you can see, is tight to this property boundary here, which is the way it has been historically. And this whole lot fabric along here is quite tight as well. So it's a similar lot size and even setbacks for many of the dwellings along here. So in terms of the proposed severed lot to be supported through the zoning, it's consistent with that lot fabric through the street. With respect to zoning, we're requesting 2 site-specific A zones, which permit 1 and 2 family dwellings. The relief being requested is primarily just recognizing all the existing conditions. The area where new relief, I guess, is needed is specifically just with respect to the slight reduction in the lot area for the severed parcel of the carriage house. And also a slight increase in the lot coverage from 33 1/3 to 35.4%. And with respect to the main house, there's a requirement of a minimum or a maximum depth of a building. So the building is already quite deep beyond what's allowed under the bylaw because of its historic size. The garage addition would increase that slightly more, but with respect to the impacts, given the nature and the historic building envelope that was there, and also the nature of the wall around the property as well, we're of the opinion that it's appropriate to have that slight increase. And with respect to the lot coverage, the increase, the whole of the property in terms of impacts is largely unchanged. There's a large amount of green space on the property. The main house property itself is about 1,400 square meters, so it's a very large property for 2 dwelling units. So with respect to impacts, it's still 3 units on the property as a whole is viewed as appropriate. So in summary, we believe the relief request is appropriate and that the proposed development is in the public interest, and we just ask that the time comes that Planning Committee recommend approval of the zoning bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Could I hear from staff, please?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Notice for this public meeting was given in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act. To date, no inquiries or submissions have been received from the public on this file, and any comments that are received will be addressed by staff in the comprehensive report that will be brought back to the committee at a future date.
And questions from the committee? Councillor Neal?
Just 2 very brief ones. One's probably for staff. I'm curious whether this application will go to Heritage, or will this go through the designated the through staff, a staff recommendation coming back in a CAO report. Which model would this be following?
Through you, Madam Chair, with the proposed severance, there does have to be a new bylaw for the heritage designation drawn up for the proposed 2 new properties, and for that reason, it will go back to Heritage Kingston.
Thank you. And my question for the planner, I'm a little curious. I haven't seen in my experience before where there's a severance with between of a building itself, and in fact, you're going to have some kind of easement agreement between both parties. Is this a common thing? I'm just curious. I've never seen that before.
No, it's a good question, and it was certainly one that had us scratching our heads and lots of back and forth with staff about how it would work. So I guess the most common or similar situation you'd probably see is in some of the older neighborhoods in the city where you have houses fairly close together, but they have a common shared driveway, and oftentimes there'll be a right-of-way in favor of each property because the driveway is only maybe 3 meters wide in total, and then at the back there may be a shared garage as well, like a 2-car garage. So it's a similar situation to that, really necessitated by the fact that you've got this stone wall, and widening the opening or creating 2 separate entrances would be challenging to say the least. So essentially what's done is just kind of create that mutual right-of-way in favor of both properties to ensure access. And then in a sense, this is kind of like a semi-detached building where you have this common wall down the middle. Though it's not actually gonna be a wall, it's an open breezeway. So it's, yeah, you can see why we had fun with figuring out how to deal with it.
Yeah, I remember the old expression, good fences make good neighbors. I'm not sure severances always make for good neighbors.
Yeah.
So I hope this works out. Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, we'll open this to the public. Are there members of the public who would like to comment on this application? Mr. Dixon, if you'd like to give your name and address, please.
Frank Dixon, 495 Alfred, Apartment 2, K7K 4J4. So, Madam Chair, committee members, staff, and planners, and residents, I followed this through Heritage. It had been there earlier. So I think the plan is sound. It was very well presented. And I just have one question. Since you're going to be severing it with the joint entrance off Simcoe Street, and the original house as it stands now has a King Street address, with the carriage house being severed, is it going to have a Simcoe Street address, or will it be a King, like say, number A or whatever? I'm just sort of curious about that. Everything else seems good. Thank you.
And I'll just see if there are any other questions, and then I'll ask Mr. Toll at the end. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, if you'd like to answer that, please.
Thanks. That's right. Yeah, our understanding is it likely would be addressed as a Simcoe Street address. The addressing is up to the city in terms of what makes sense from a fire safety perspective, but given that its frontage is fully on Simcoe Street, we expect it to be Simcoe.
Ms. Bolton?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, I was just going to confirm that there would need to be a separate address for the carriage house, and generally civic addressing, we determine the address based on the location of the driveway, so in all likelihood the carriage house would have a Simcoe Street address.
Great, thank you very much. And one more chance for the committee. Seeing no more questions, thank you very much for your presentation. And I will close our first public meeting. And I'll open our second public meeting, and that is in an application for zoning bylaw amendment, 2165 Bath Road. And Mr. Keane will be presenting.
Well, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Committee, staff, and members of the public. My name is Mike Keane, and I'm a land use planner with Foten Consultants. And I'm here this evening tonight to present a zoning bylaw amendment for 2165 Bath Road. So this site is located on Collins Bay, and it used to be an ambulance house. For a few years, it was used to wash cars. It currently sits vacant, and it's close to the marinas. If you know, there's a handful of marinas that kind of operate in that area. And our client is a veterinary clinic, and they've purchased the building and hope to repurpose it. So in terms of the application itself, it's a zoning bylaw amendment, and the intent is really to reuse the existing building, conduct a few improvements, but there would not be an expansion of the building in terms of height, footprint, or any of those types of things. This area of the city is on well and septic, and it would be the intent to maintain those services. And through a site plan application, there would be a few further improvements slated for down the road. The hope is actually that they'll be operational by September. So some of these improvements might be coinciding with operation pending, of course, this what we hope to be a zoning approval shortly. So this just kind of gives you an idea of the Schultz and Zabak architect rendering of how they see really just retreating the face of the building and making a couple of improvements to the buildings, the removal of the doors, but then filling those doors in with large windows and creating a bit of an overhang for the site. In terms of the official plan, this area is designated as arterial commercial, and it's one of those uses that's actually listed in our official plan as a permitted use, the actual vet clinic. And along the water, because this is a waterfront property, there is an EPA designation, and the intent would be to leave that as is, undisturbed. The current building is centrally located on the site. It's over 40 meters away from the water, and so there'd be no reason to need to fill in any closer. There's enough land between the building and the road to accommodate parking. So overall, the project conforms to the official plan. So looking at the zoning bylaw, it already has a arterial type zoning on the property. But it does have a marine focus. It does allow other uses like restaurants and other more generic commercial uses, but it was missing a veterinary clinic. And in the old township bylaw, there is no such term as a veterinary clinic, so the actual term is animal clinic, but it's one and the same. And rather than amend the term, we're just keeping the term since the meaning was the same. So ultimately, because this zone conforms in terms of all the setbacks, parking, all of the normal requirements of a zoning bylaw, the only change to the zone is to simply add the veterinary clinic use. So, but as I said, animal hospital is the term used in that area. So in summary, this application represents good land use planning because it's going to see the redevelopment of an underutilized arterial commercial site. It's going to dress it up. It's going to clean up the site overall. It's our opinion that it's consistent with the provincial policy statement and official plan, and that the zoning would be appropriate to allow the use. And ultimately down the road, should they choose to pave the parking area, there would be site plan triggered. And I can tell you that we do intend to go through a site plan application, which will bring some landscaping to the site and a small paved area in front of the building. And that summarizes the application, and I'm pleased to answer any questions.
And from staff, please.
Certainly. Through you, Madam Chair, the application was noticed as per the requirements of the Planning Act, and to date, one piece of written correspondence has been received, which should be included as into your package for your review.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Seeing, Councillor Turner.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I think it's a great land planning solution, and I think it's a really nice design. I just had a quick question. Would the owners, I hope they're aware that there's a train and train whistles, and also there's a airport expansion underway. So in terms of them bringing in animals and dogs, I just want to make sure that they're aware of that and the
Yes.
noise.
Yes, well, through you, Madam Chair, the vets that have purchased this site actually have a few local clinics already, and I believe they're very aware of the train in particular. But the airport expansion is something, certainly to be considered, especially stress-caused animals that are going in for surgery. So it's a concrete building, so it's a pretty robust building, even with the large glass windows. So I would hope that would help a little bit. So.
Okay, thank you. I was just thinking about when you take a dog out of a car into a building, they might want to alert their clients about that. And yeah, maybe they can use white noise if there's an issue, but
Yeah.
as long as they're aware of it, I'd be happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, I'd like to open this to members of the public. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak to this application? Seeing none, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I will close that public meeting and open our third public meeting, which is an application for zoning bylaw amendment, 103 Richardson Drive.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the council and staff members as well. My name is Henry Ban. I'm one of the owners of 103 Richardson Drive. The meeting was called today to request the zoning bylaw amendment seeking to rezone the property from A2 to the parent A3. The purpose of this amendment is to recognize and permit an existing second dwelling unit in the basement of the existing building and to address any deficiencies in the performance standards resulting from the conversion to a two-family dwelling without alteration to the building footprint or massing. 103 Richardson Drive is a regularly shaped parcel with an area of approximately 599 square meters and approximately 16.5 meters of frontage along Richardson Drive. The property includes a 1.5-story single-family dwelling, an existing basement apartment, an existing detached garage, and a driveway. The rear yard of the property is used for amenity. Currently, there is parking in the detached garage, and we are proposing for relief so that we can have front yard parking. You can see the car currently in the parking spot. We're proposing to make a slight change to the paved driveway to extend the width a tiny bit, which will not really affect the green space at all. So this is actually the plan drawn up by FOTEN. The secondary residential unit occupies the basement, and it also consists of a 3-bedroom unit. The primary unit is also 3 bedrooms. In addition to the rear of the dwelling includes access to the basement unit, and the primary unit is accessed through the front. The site is located within the City of Kingston's Polson Park neighborhood and is in proximity to St. Lawrence College, several schools, the Marshlands Conservation Area, and community parks. The site is well serviced by Kingston Transit. It is located slightly more than 5 minutes walking distance from express routes 701 and 702, while routes 3 and 18 pass within 500 meters of the site. At this location, Richardson Drive is a 2-lane local road which provides access to Bath Road and Portsmouth Avenue, ensuring rapid access to the Gardeners Road commercial corridor, the downtown central business district, and St. Lawrence College. The development application seeks to permit the conversion of an existing single detached dwelling to a 2-family dwelling with a total of 2 residential units. An existing secondary suite in the basement is currently vacant, but was in operation as a non-conforming use prior to the current ownership. There is no proposed alteration to the exterior of the building. Changes to the interior may be required subject to Ontario Building Code requirements. The application for rezoning seeks to permit the conversion of a 1 residential unit dwelling into a 2 residential unit dwelling. The building has functioned as a non-conforming 2-unit dwelling for several years prior to acquisition. I am seeking to bring the site into conformity and compliance with the zoning bylaw prior to resuming rental of the second dwelling unit. The proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement, which encourages appropriate intensification in the urban area. The proposal is also consistent with the official plan, as it will contribute to the city's density targets without causing undue burden to the municipal servicing or adversely affecting adjacent properties, and is in an area which demands and can support increased density. In summary, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to allow an increase in residential units in the existing dwelling is sympathetic to the character and size of surrounding residences and represents an appropriate use of these subject lands.
And could I hear from staff, please?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Pursuant to the requirements of the Planning Act, a notice of the statutory public meeting was provided. No correspondence at this time has been received from the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Councillor Neal.
Yes, so I believe I heard you say that the current secondary suite was rented before in non-compliance, but it's now vacant. Is that accurate?
Upon acquisition of the property, the secondary unit is vacant.
And the other compliance issue that you're seeking is for front yard parking. Is that front yard parking space currently there?
Yes, the parking space has existed for quite some time.
Okay. This won't be directed at you, it'll be directed at staff. As you're aware, Sydenham and Williamsville and Kingstown, we get all kinds of complaints about front yard parking. And we have some people who have mobility issues that get tickets for front yard parking. And I've mentioned this before. Unless there's a really compelling reason why we should waive that rule bylaw elsewhere, I won't personally be able to support any planning application that just is a straight waiver of front yard parking. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turner?
Yes, and thank you. Can you tell me how much space you want to take up for parking? I wasn't really clear on that. Like, how much did you want to expand for parking? The whole front yard or just a portion of it? Or
Actually, a very little portion. If I go back to the
could you
picture
show us
of-
numbers maybe or something?
We're only planning to expand by about 0.38 meters. So, in essence, maybe that much. Maybe that much of a paved area.
Okay, so you're
And
going
the
to...
planner would like to answer as well.
Sure, yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I would just like to direct committee members to Exhibit F of the report. What's being proposed is tandem parking. and in which one parking space will be provided in the garage, and the subsequent parking space will be provided in the front yard, but in tandem following the parking space in the garage. As you can see from the drawing there, it will be located in the driveway leading to the garage. Unfortunately, I do have to mention that the diagram up there is not correct. Exhibit F is shown as the correct drawing, showing that there is not going to be a widening of the driveway, but showing that there will be tandem parking on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And I would like to open this now to the public. Sir, if you would like to come to a microphone just up here, James will show you.
My name is Bob Check. I live at 86 Richardson Drive, which is across the street from 103. I just wanted to point out the inconsistency between this photograph, or the site photograph, Exhibit I, and F, where the tandem parking is not shown in the photo, but rather they're parking in an illegal spot. Is that correct?
Actually, we will take all questions and have you answer them at the very end. So if you could note that down, thank you. What I'm going to do is ask you to ask your questions, and we'll see if any other members of the public would like to ask questions, and then we'll have the planner and the presenter answer them all at the same time.
Okay.
So did you have a second? The first one was about tandem parking.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Tandem parking, the way the parking is to be
Yes, I'm just
established.
saying that there's an inconsistency between what's being displayed here in the photo, or Exhibit F versus Exhibit I.
And we will get Ms. Eusebio to explain that after. And do you have
Okay.
another question?
And as a neighbor and resident in that area, should I see such inconsistent parking, i.e. side-by-side parking, I would then be allowed to call the bylaw officer or whatnot to ask them to cease and desist.
We will get Ms. Eusebio to answer you as soon as we've got all our questions.
Okay.
Okay? Yep.
Did you say that you were one of the owners of the?
Yes, there are 3 owners currently of this property.
You have no intention of living in the house? You'll be an absentee landlord?
Sir, again, we don't start a dialogue back and forth with proponents
Okay.
at a public meeting. We keep it fairly formal. So we will ask the proponent at the end.
Okay, well, we've had a number of issues with the renters who have been in the place in terms of garbage, and the typical stuff that we have when we have renters in that are not owners, or that the owner is not in the building to sort of supervise the collection of the garbage and the removal of the garbage bins after the garbage pickups and whatnot. So my concern was how as an absentee landlord, they would address that kind of problem. Okay.
Thank you. I'll get staff to answer all of these when we find out if there are any other members of the public who would like to speak.
Okay.
Okay? Are there other members of the public who would like to address this application?
If
Yes,
I can
sir?
have my planner come up.
Are you one of the applicants or a member of the public?
He is actually my planner.
Okay, let me just see if any other members of the public would like to speak, and then I'll give you free rein. Mr. Dixon?
Yeah, just very briefly, along the point that Councillor Neal was raising, it isn't so much a parking in the front yard where you're planning to sort of turn in a sort of a crescent and actually park right in the middle of the front yard, as much as it is you're planning to kind of park in front of the steps, right? Based on the diagram that I'm seeing. So if that is the case, then I think I could actually go along with that. It isn't that much of a modification, so That's really the only issue I had. I know that there have been similar issues in this neighborhood with secondary suite applications that have come in. I've been at the, following the committee for a while, and I've seen that. So I can understand neighbors wanting to hear about issues with absentee landlords and this sort of thing. So I don't live near there myself, but the neighborhood is changing a little bit. So I think that as a proponent, you do have to address that. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to ask any questions?
If I could address actually both issues presented.
Yes, please.
Upon procuring this property, I'm actually the owner responsible for maintenance of the building and keeping an eye on the tenants, so to speak. Upon purchase, I've already, the original tenants are no longer there. I actually go through quite a process to ensure that I do not get bad tenants, so to speak. And also, I visit the property very regularly. I'd say bi-weekly, just to check up on things. And I am planning to have a lot of work done on the property as well. You've probably noticed that there's a new roof on the garage. I'm planning to have the garage repaired and potentially have the outside of the building some of the outside of the building redone as well. You'll notice that the back and front yards are actually quite well maintained now. I do come by regularly to maintain the property. I myself live quite close to the building, and should there be any problems, I am more than happy to give you my phone number. If you have a problem with a tenant, please do contact me.
Thank you for that. And would you like to speak, sir?
Yes, my name is Yuko Leclerc. I'm a planner with Foten Consultants, and I worked on the planning report for this file. I just want to clarify the issue of the diagram. The diagram that you're seeing up on the screen here, this is from the original planning report, and staff raised a concern with, as Councillor Neal pointed out, the front yard parking being in front of the house. So the Exhibit F in your package is showing the revised concept, where the front yard parking is still being permitted, but in a tandem arrangement. So that there's a parking space in that garage and there's a parking space in the front yard leading to that garage. And what Exhibit F also shows is that this arrangement allows for a fully separated pathway for pedestrians to access the rear.
So to clarify, you're expecting the cars to be one in front of the other?
That's correct.
In
That's what's being requested.
That's what will be the legal result of this? Yeah, that's correct. Thank you.
I do apologize for the mix-up.
And I hope you too take the offer of the phone number and terrific, thank you. Did you wish to speak, Mr. Eusebio? Okay, thanks. Any other questions from members of the public or from the committee? Councillor Neal?
Just a question of our staff. Given that this is 2 units and therefore only 2 parking spaces, as I understand the bylaw, will be required, is there any way that those 2 spaces could be accommodated without requiring relief for front yard parking? And if that can't be, if that's a maybe and needs to be looked at more thoroughly before the comprehensive report comes back, I'm quite comfortable with that.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. So looking at the configuration of the lot, the way it's currently laid out, there would potentially be an option to look at expanding the rear yard parking. It would be with modification to the garage to allow 2 cars to get in and out, but I don't believe that, it's hard to tell from this drawing because it doesn't have all of the dimensions on it, but I don't think that there would be adequate space for a car to park beside the house and still have an unobstructed, safe pedestrian walkway to the second unit, which would be of primary concern from a safety perspective. But certainly, the zoning bylaw does contemplate and allow a certain amount of rear yard parking, which could be accommodated potentially with modification to the garage.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I'm sorry, sir, that was the public portion of the meeting. when I asked for if there were more people who wished to speak, that's when I needed to hear from you. Now, the planner is here, and certainly if you would like to present anything written, and the owner is here, if you have would like to have some discussions, because I think he seems to be open to discussion. Okay, thank you. No further questions from the committee. I will close this public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I would like to open the regular business portion of the Planning Committee and call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda, knowing that Councillor Neal wishes to add other business to the agenda. Is that correct, Councillor Neal? You wish to add to the agenda through other business?
I'm sorry. Could you ask that again? I was in a different
I'm
conversation.
just asking for approval of the agenda with the understanding you want to amend it to add some other business.
Yes, I just wanted to speak under other business about a couple of issues on the abeyance list.
Okay.
Thank you.
So could I have mover? Oh, and Councillor McLaren has.
I would like to ask a
add.
question during the other.
Okay. So I need a mover and seconder for the Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor McLaren. All those in favor? And confirmation of the minutes, Thursday, June 9th. Moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Turner. Errors, omissions? All those in favor? Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Oh, sorry, there's a second one. June 16th minutes. Moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Osanek. Errors or omissions? All those in favor? And disclosure of pecuniary interest. Councillor McLaren?
I, Jeff McLaren, declare my pecuniary interest in the matter of B, the application for the zoning bylaw 103 Richardson Drive.
Thank you. We have no delegations, briefings. This is the first application for zoning bylaw amendment, 2165, that we just had the presentation for the veterinary clinic, and we have recommendation from staff. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Turner. Questions? All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. And this is the Councillor McLaren is stepping away. Application for zoning bylaw amendment 103 Richardson Drive. And there is a recommendation from staff. Moved by Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor Osanek. Questions? Councillor Neal?
Yes, are we on B now or are we still on A? We're on B now.
Yes.
I just was in conversation with our Director of Planning who suggested if we deferred this, there might be an opportunity to resolve the issue about finding alternative parking, alternative to front yard parking. So for that reason, I would move deferral of this to our next planning meeting. If there's a seconder, and I have support for that.
Seconded by
Thank you.
Councillor Osanek. To time and place. So deferral to the next.
At our next planning meeting.
Yeah.
And right here.
Any discussion?
Thank you.
On the, Councillor Turner?
I have a question to staff, if that would be okay with the builders or the...
It's to do with time and place at this point.
Yeah, I'm asking
Oh,
about the time and the place. Yeah, is
Okay.
it okay? Are they under like constriction for passing this in a hurry or like any time or restraints with their planning?
Ms. Eusebio?
Through you, Madam Chair, if I can understand the question correctly, would that cause a timing issue in terms of the building permits and that sort of thing? I don't think it will. They will be applying for a change of use building permit, which will recognize the second unit.
We'll take the vote. All those in favor of the deferral? Thank you. So that's been deferred for 1 month. Okay. And Councillor McLaren returns application for zoning bylaw amendment 1575 Westbrook Road. There is a recommendation from staff. Could I have a mover? Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Allen. Comments, questions? All those in favor? Thank you, that carries. And application for zoning bylaw amendment, 484 Days Road. And a recommendation is here from staff. Mover and a seconder. Councillor Osanek, seconded by Councillor Turner. Question? Councillor Allen?
I don't know if it's a question, it's certainly a comment. I just really enjoyed seeing the owner of this building respond to some of the issues and participate in the dialogue in a sort of public fashion by putting his correspondence on there. I think that was refreshing and interesting for a landowner to do. I hadn't seen that in a planning package before, and so I just it's nice to sort of see a dialogue rather than just one-way conversation all the time. So I can understand sort of the neighborhood concerns, but I think as the owner, especially around traffic, as the owner points out in his letter, the volume is citywide. It's not just road-wide or related to the use of his building specifically. So I think it's a great heritage building, and hopefully it can be adapted to a new use that's of benefit to the community. So I support this recommendation.
Thank you. And I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you, that passes. And we do have a report from staff, information on the updated cash in lieu parking bylaw, zoning bylaw amendments. Would you like to introduce this, please?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. The reports that are included in the information report this evening are background as well as some current report that we've had the MMM group work on with respect to updating the cash in lieu bylaw for the city. When we were looking at that, we realized that in order to implement an updated cash in lieu of parking bylaw, we really needed to have an updated current parking standard based on industry best practices to recognize the area that this would apply to, which is the Williamsville Main Street area as well as the downtown and harbor area. The existing cash in lieu of parking bylaw that applies in the city only applies to the downtown and harbor area, and it only permits cash in lieu of parking to be entertained for conversion of existing vacant commercial space. So we're not able to apply the bylaw today to any new construction or new developments. The other element of it is that the existing cash in lieu of parking bylaw only charges a levy of $3,000 per parking space. So what we're looking at doing through this is updating the parking ratios to be current based on the work that the MMM group has done for us, and then updating the cash in lieu bylaw and expanding the scope of that bylaw so that we're able to use it as a tool for new developments coming forward in the area that we're targeting intensification within the city. So that's what that is. We're looking into, or we are starting consultation next week. We have a session Wednesday afternoon here in Memorial Hall from 1 to 3, and we have a session Thursday morning at the Invista Center from 9 to 11 to hear input from the public and the developers. And from there, we also have a public meeting that will be held here at Planning Committee at the next meeting on August 4th. And following that, then we'll be able to come back with some timing with respect to bringing forward the actual amendments.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Neal.
Just wanted to thank you for adding the public meeting in the downtown, in the central core area. I appreciate that.
Councillor Allen?
I just wanted to, I hadn't quite gotten through the report. I was working through it yesterday, as I told Director Agnew. And so one of the things that I sort of got a sense we were heading towards was defining different ratios for different parts of the city, so, or in different types of development. Is that where we're going with this in terms of the recommendation. So if it's in the central business district, we're going to have a different sort of ratio than we might have out Bath Road near a transit hub or something.
Some of that will be looked at in more detail through the comprehensive zoning bylaw project coming forward. The reason the study area is what it's defined for this is because we've had so many applications for redevelopment and received so many different parking studies coming forward with a variety of ratios that we really needed to land somewhere in terms of what our bottom line minimum ratio is in terms of what we can support and how we can start using the cash in lieu as a tool here. With respect to looking at other areas, there may be some differential zoning when we do get into looking at it in terms of location. There might be some differences based on location, but we're not there yet.
If I could add to that, Madam Chair. So also what our intention is to get to a place where we're not entertaining on a consistent basis site-specific amendments to reduce the parking ratio for developments and then that be it. So this is a strategy to look at what's our minimum standard, providing an opportunity if for some reason it can't be accommodated on the site, there's a cash in lieu option, and then as a city, we're working on, and there will be a report to council over the next couple of months that lays out a detailed strategy with respect to how are we going to utilize the cash in lieu fund that will start to fairly rapidly accumulate based on the expanded area and the increase to the value of the space and the levy on the spaces from what we've done in the past from 3,000 to something that's much more consistent with industry standard and reflective of actually the true cost of providing that parking.
Yes, at the current rate, it's taken us over a dozen years to not even pay for a single spot in the proposed North Block development. So we certainly need this update to provide necessary parking for our residents in our downtown and our tourist area for sure. I have one other question because I thought it was so interesting because we always end up talking about minimums and what we should waive and what the minimum is. And I thought it was very interesting in these studies that they talked about maximums. Are we going to be considering maximums as well in terms of trying to reduce or surface parking in places where we're trying to intensify or that sort of thing?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we will be. One of the things is we want to make sure that developers aren't oversupplying to make sure we meet the goals and objectives of our official plan and the transportation master plan. So we have policies in both places that are encouraging the modal shift, getting people away from the automobile. So we want to put the maximums in place so that we don't end up with oversupply.
Fabulous, thank you.
Neil.
I'm just going to get really parochial for a minute because I am the Williamsville councillor. I just, I really want to reinforce the idea that this is a fund being developed for parking throughout the central core of the city. For years, we've had parking reserve funds that have been raised citywide, but they've always been considered something primarily for the BIA area. And I appreciate that this, when fully implemented, will create parking on Upper Princess Street as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Nope. Thank you very much. Okay. And we have no motions, notices of motions, other business. Councillor Neal.
Yes, I have two questions that I gave a heads up earlier so that this isn't an ambush question. But the way that, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, the way that we handle planning requests is often the developer will come with to have a public meeting, and that puts everything in kind of abeyance and in limbo, awaiting the developer to come back with the information to have the comprehensive final report. There are two addresses, 346 University and 2003 Colburn, which came through planning in 2010, had their public meeting a year or two after that, and we've been waiting on those files. In the meantime, they've had going on 7 years now, of illegal compliance, collecting rent, and not bringing their units into compliance with zoning. And frankly, that's really troubling. There must be some way that we can light a fire under some of these developers and get the information we need. And if not, we should be going to them and saying they are in non-compliance with the zoning, and these are the consequences. Perhaps staff can speak to both of those files.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Both of these files have a significant history to them. As you indicated, they were both applications that were submitted based on a zoning prosecution that was occurring. So typically the process is that if someone's found in non-compliance and a prosecution is started, if they submit a zoning application and are going through the process, prosecution doesn't occur during that time frame. With respect to 349 University Avenue, as you indicated, it was submitted in 2010. Under our tariff of fee bylaw for the city, we're only able to close a planning file after 5 years of inactivity. Staff had followed up with that applicant a number of times, indicating, where is this going? We require an additional submission. We're going to go ahead and close this file if we don't see any activity on it. And in all cases, we were told, there's a submission coming, there's a submission coming. Funny enough, we actually received a submission on 349 University within the last few weeks. So we will be reactivating that file. We will be requiring it to come forward for an additional public meeting so we can start the process and put it through the proper process and require it to go from beginning to end within a reasonable time frame. We want to get this completed. I think what actually pushed them to come forward in this case is there may be a property transaction or something going on. With respect to the other property, 203 Colburn Street, again, it's another situation where there was a prosecution going on. We received the application. There was progress made with respect to the application in terms of moving it ahead, and at some point, it just stopped moving, and there has not been any activity on that one. So as far as that one goes, we do need to follow up. We need to follow up with legal and find out what's going on with that one. Again, we've got the issue with the tariff of fee bylaw where we've got 5 years, but they followed up through the process a couple of years in and said we want to keep the file open. So we haven't been able to actually close the file and move ahead with prosecution. But again, unfortunately, there has been some change in staff and different things, and the file hasn't been actively pursued. So we need to pick that up and move with it again.
Yeah, I would really appreciate if there's a way that we can close these files. And I know that, and I appreciate that we're going to start the process off again with a public meeting, because I've complained before about how if the public meeting is 4 years before the comprehensive report comes in, there should be another public meeting. However, does that next public meeting, say at university, does that start the clock all over again, and they're beginning a 5-year, potentially a 5-year process all over again?
Through you, Madam Chair, we need to stay on top of it. It needs to be resolved. We can't let it continue to drag on as it has. So you're correct that there needs to be action, and it needs to be taken care of. The whole thing needs to go through a reasonable process in a short amount of time at this point.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor McLaren.
Thank you. And this is a heads up to a news article that might be coming out in the WIG tomorrow. That might have some relevance to planning. It seems that there was a murder at a parking lot at Walmart recently, and the WIG article seems to suggest that the parking lot was so stuffed full of cars that they had to airlift the person out because I guess that emergency vehicles couldn't get in there. And they're also claiming that, or at least somebody there is in the article is claiming that they couldn't, that it's because there's only one entrance into this Walmart, There is the opportunity for road rage when people can't get in and out, and especially in a hot day. As a heads up, is the city perhaps in any case liable for any of that? And going forward, the traffic study that was done for that one seems to have not taken that into consideration. And hopefully, if there is another Walmart that's coming up, that could be addressed, because it looks like we lost a life as a result.
I'm not sure you'd be able to answer any of that, but go ahead, please.
So we do not have an application for site plan control yet for that property. I can tell you that through all of the traffic work that was done and all of the work that was done on the official plan and zoning amendment, the fire department did have the opportunity to review all of the plans and the traffic studies to ensure that there is appropriate fire access to the site. There is a secondary access point that doesn't go out to Division Street that goes in through the Kings Lake Plaza, so there is a second opportunity for vehicles to get out of that property. I'm familiar with the article that you're referencing with respect to that situation, but not that site in particular. But we have looked at that, and we'll look at it in more detail through the site plan control process. So once we get that application, and we'll raise that again when they come in for pre-application with respect to the site plan control application. So your concerns are noted. We've noted the challenges with the site with respect to access all the way through the process, and it's very high on our radar in terms of the things we need to take into consideration when looking at the site.
Thank you. And that's it for other business. We have 2 items of correspondence, and the next meeting is August the 4th, 6:30. Motion to adjourn. Yes. But maybe there'll be more council meetings and you'll be fine, right? Okay. Okay. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Neal, Councillor Allen, all those in favor? Thank you.